Welcome to the Issues of Sports, the NCAA Tournament edition. I am Evan E-Mak Makovsky, and I'm with my partner, Rude Dog Reyes, and we are coming out of the gates fired up because we have CBS studio analysts for college basketball. It all starts tomorrow. Kellogg, you're turning things up here in basically 3 weeks. Here we go, right?
Oh, yeah. We're on the roller coaster. We're strapped in, man, and we're going to take our first trip up to the highest peak before this thing comes down and starts twists and turns and all the unpredictability that's part of what we love about this time of year in March Madness. So, yeah, it's time to turn it up. We're excited and amped and looking forward to a 16-game day tomorrow.
Wow.
And Friday. We'll reduce it to 8 on Saturday, 8 on Sunday. So if you do the math, that's 48 games in 4 days. Me and my colleagues, Sir Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, Greg Gumbel, and obviously our great team behind the scenes will be manning the studio from New York.
Let's get into that. We'll get into your pick as Gonzaga as the national championship shortly. But you mentioned Charles Barkley and Kenny, and I want you to be honest here. We're not throwing them under the bus, but how much college basketball? Because they only have so much time with their NBA schedule. Let's just be honest. There's a joke, but now is Charles Barkley's job there? Q rating. Tell me what you see if you're breaking down a play. But I have to think so much more, at least about the players and the schools and the records and, versus them. And part of that is just there's only so much time for them and they have to do their NBA job.
No doubt. We all have a limited amount of bandwidth for what we're called to do. I'm clearly focused on the college basketball season. I start preparing for the tournament in October. Watching practices, going to practices, watching volumes and volumes and volumes of games. Obviously, Kenny and Charles are locked into the NBA. It will be me helicoptering into the NBA for a few weeks. So it works fine, though, because we know basketball. They have a tremendous passion for the game, knowledge of the game. And I'm there because I've been watching these kids all year long, these teams, these coaches, and we can have nice banter off air that actually materializes on air as we're watching games. I mean, the game is not complicated when you've played at the level those guys have played at. And both were tremendous college players, and Charles is a Hall of Famer. Kenny was an outstanding NBA player and the two-time champion. So basketball is basketball, and they know it as well as anybody. Their personalities add tremendously to our coverage. Their insights are on point. And it works. The three of us together, there's great mutual respect. There's great knowledge of the game, passion for the game. And clearly, I mean, I'm watching more and more. So I have reams of information that I can share with the viewer, but also can share with my colleagues. And we do that for the sake of everybody being able to make a really good contribution to elevating and serving the game. And hopefully we're giving you information, but also causing you to exercise your laugh muscles a little bit too.
Live muscle, everybody wants to call it bandwidth. I call it manwidth, right? Because
that's fine. Yeah.
Because you have a lot of guys that are in different locations, reporters, sideline reporters, people that are out of studio, in studio. So a lot of correlation, a lot of communication across the board. When they say madness, there is no joke. I've been to Elite Eights. I've been to Final Fours. And one thing I do know, it is a madhouse inside of the arenas. I can't even imagine what it's like to have these conversations about several different teams in a 15 to 30 second, break, maybe even a 5-minute stint after one team gets upsetted. How are you guys able to really kind of dial in and refine this, doing it year after year after year in the studio? How does that work?
Yeah, Rude Dog, it's actually staying true to the fundamentals. I mean, we're there to provide insight into the games, and we want to do it in an informative, entertaining fashion. We want to be authentic and real, and that comes across. We love the game. This is a special sporting event. It's one of the most popular sporting events on the calendar, and it is crazy. I mean, behind the scenes, our producers, directors, graphics operators, all of the folks that make up the team are running on adrenaline. You're talking 16 games. starting at noon tomorrow. And we won't get off the air until sometime between 12:15 and maybe 1 a.m. And then we'll have to, hit rinse and repeat and do it again on Friday. And then it gradually starts to wane in terms of the length of days and volume of games to where you get an exhale when you head into the Sweet 16 next week. But really, it's all about preparation, being enthusiastic and engaged in what you're doing, which is very easy to do because of the love affair that we all have with the game. And then the personalities that are there make for a great team. And we really all are extremely grateful for what we get to do. We know how special this thing is, and to be able to have a chance to bring it to the masses, it's a tremendous gift for us, and we try not to take that for granted.
Clark, before we get into the brackets, this is who I know, he's a friend of yours. I know him through growing up in Connecticut, Jim Nantz, and this is going to be his last NCAA tournament. You've been with CBS forever. I mean, I even know I believe in 1990, UNLV blew out Duke, and that was, I believe, Brent Musburger's last game. And I think next year in 91, when Duke upset UNLV and then they beat Kansas in the finals, that I think was Jim Nantz's first final. So
I think it may have very well. I think you're right. I think you're exactly right, Evan.
Because I remember him hosting from McNichols Arena in Denver in 1990. But we know what a great broadcaster. You did the games with him. You've interacted with him. You know him personally. A great broadcaster is in Ian Eagle is supplanting Jim Nantz, and Ian Eagle is very worthy of that number one chair. And also another sport in football, Ian Eagle, which Nantz is not stepping aside. Ian Eagle's terrific. So I mean, a great broadcaster that is coming in, but Jim Nantz is leaving college basketball, and I know University of Houston, where he was Freddie Couples' roommate, I believe, but they're the number one seed, and this is going to be it for college basketball and Jim Nantz. What can you say about the broadcaster, his contribution to college basketball, basically calling, the championship game for some semblance of 30 years. And I know you know him as a person well off the air.
Yeah, first and foremost, as an individual, he's as good as it gets. Genuine, authentic, caring, compassionate. He's special to be around. And I count it a privilege to call him a friend. I really do. I mean, I enjoyed the 5 years we were able to work together calling the national championship game, but he's a legendary voice in all of broadcasting. Legendary voice with still quite a bit of runway in front of him. He's actually decided to get off the basketball runway in college basketball, but he's had 30 plus years of being the voice of college basketball, and not just calling the games, but being a real advocate and ambassador and caregiver and guardian of the game. I mean, he has a real passion and care for the stories, for the people, and the stories are all people, whether they're players or their families or coaches. And he has an unbelievable way of telling stories and also recalling the history of the game. That's something that you just don't have unless you've been around a long time and you've done it at a certain level of excellence. So he will be missed from that standpoint. I mean, for a full generation plus, probably 2 or 3 generations of basketball fans, he's been synonymous with the tournament. I started at CBS full-time in 97. This will be my 26th or 27th Final Four, either in the studio or calling the games. And Nantz he surpasses me by a handful of years in that regard. So it's been an unbelievable run. He felt it was time to transition. I'm thrilled for Ian. He's one of the outstanding broadcasters in the business. And he's really, I think, he's great at everything he does, Ian, but I think he's really ideal in basketball. He's got a cadence, a rhythm, and he does so much basketball at the NBA level in addition to college. Yeah, so it's a great opportunity, and it just speaks to the quality of our talent pool here at CBS. The continuity, Ian has been there. Him and Spinarco make a fantastic team. I've had the privilege of working with Ian, as have other analysts at CBS, and he too is as good as it gets in his own style and his own way. But Jim, iconic. Hall of Famer, legendary, and has left the game better because of how he served it. and how he served the people in it. He's highly esteemed and greatly admired and respected by his colleagues and peers because he's treated folks with class and dignity, and he's done his work with great class and dignity and excellence. And again, I count it a privilege to be able to reach out to him as a friend.
I'm going to miss him, especially you said headway. It makes me think of fairway because I'm sure with that part of his career in retirement mode, he's going to be able to help facilitate his golf game to be that much better because he'll have the time to dedicate playing alongside of Tony Romo. From what I heard, Tony Romo was very good at golf.
Yeah,
well.
I think they both have pretty good sticks. I know Tony's got a pretty good one, and Jim is, he's working to get to that level as well.
Yeah, it just takes time, and of course, don't put me on a golf course; I'll slice it every time. I think college basketball is going to miss probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest, to ever call games, and his fluidity, his verbiage, the way that he does it is just something special. And for those that aren't listening or paying attention, you should go back, go to YouTube. You're going to find some great stuff on Jim Nantz. Maybe one day there'll be an Ask 30 for 30 on Jim Nantz to go over his career, his highlights, his life, and whatever challenges and adversities have faced him where he's gone above and beyond and went over. So that's certainly something to talk about as well.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. He's had a wonderful career. He's lived a full life, and it hasn't been without some adversity and challenges. I remember when he lost his dad, recently lost his mom. I mean, none of us are immune to those types of ups and downs, those types of sorrows that are part of living life. And he's encountered them and handled them with the level of grace and fortitude that's admirable. And his work is very public facing because sports is so highly esteemed in our culture and around the world. And those who are playing the game, but also those who are broadcasting, particularly play-by-play announcers, commentators, those people tend to be remembered by the fans of the game and those who are playing and officiating and participating in the game. So it's a really privileged position that we hold, and he's held it with great excellence and real class. And again, he's as good as it gets when you think about who he is as a person and also what he's done. The longevity of excellence in his work is unmatched.
One last question, and then I promise we'll get right to the bracket, and then we'll get you out of here. But my last question on broadcasters is one other who I used to interview when you used to come on in St. Louis was Billy Packer, and he passed away somewhat recently. And also another broadcaster that's kind of, out of the spotlight is still alive is DIck Vitale. And since we're talking about it, maybe I thought maybe you could weigh in on those two people because, if you rewind the clock, say when I was in college at Syracuse, I was there 94 to 98. I remember DIck Vitale was in the college bookstore signing books. And I mean, it was like, he was like the rock star was coming to town if he was calling a game. Now I know he doesn't do tournament games. I've heard rumors CBS has asked him this, but whatever it is, if you could just briefly just sum each of them up. You can't sum them up in just a few words, but
no, you sure can. You sure can.
But and then I promise we'll get right into the brackets. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I spent 8 years at ESPN. Dick and I never worked together, but we were colleagues and comrades and co-workers. We did the same thing in terms of being analysts. And Dick has had such a unique impact on the game. His enthusiasm, his energy, his unique phraseology. He became quite a personality and was synonymous in many ways with the growth of college basketball, as was Billy Packer in a different kind of way. Billy's analysis was spot on. He had a tremendous ability to capture and tie in the history of the game to current analysis. Never missed anything when it came to breaking down the game as far as strategy. Always had opinions that were based on research and fact and would cause you to think, whether you agreed with him or not. He would stir your pot a little bit to cause you to think about the bigger picture. And, you know, as a colleague at CBS, anytime I was with or around Billy, I learned something. I learned something about caring for the game, about keeping the game central, how you think about the game in terms of what's on the horizon. Nobody did it better than Billy Packer. He set a high bar for all of us as analysts because he was not only an analyst, but he was a caretaker and guardian of the game, and he was also a thought leader in the game. That's unique. Dick is much the same way, in a different personality, a different style, but you strip that away, and the fabric of their hearts and their passion for the game was genuine and impactful and leaves a legacy that will continue long after Billy, obviously, sadly, has passed away. But Dick is still going relatively strong for somebody that's 40 years plus. And so we'll see how long that lasts. But both have had have left indelible marks on the people that they interacted with, most importantly, but the game that they loved and called as college basketball commentators.
Last year, Clark, Gonzaga was the favorite. Everybody seemed to pick them. They didn't win. They didn't even make the Final Four. They've had, I haven't done the counting, but a handful of years where they've been championship worthy, if you want to use that term.
Doubt.
And you said it's time, basically, on the selection show. You said, I'm taking the Gonzaga Bulldogs to win the championship as a 3 seed. Vitale.
Yeah, you know, you look across the landscape, it's gotten a lot flatter, guys, because of the transfer portal. More and more teams are older and better, although we don't have the great teams we've had in recent years. You think about Baylor and Gonzaga a couple of years ago, it was pretty clear they had set a gap between themselves and others. You've had years in the past, Kansas in 08, Carolina in 09, Carolina in 05. Was that Memphis and Kansas in 08, Kentucky in 12. I mean, you've had years where it was pretty clear who the best teams were. Whether or not they were going to win it, you always have to play it out, but there was clearly a gap. This year, not so much. Alabama has looked like the most consistent two-way team, but I like Gonzaga because, you know, they always have been efficient offensively. They've gotten better. Their role players have started to become stars in their roles. You think about Watson, you think about Strother as a potential NBA player, so he's got great talent, but he's really taken his game to another level. Bolton is rock solid. Hickman and Silas have started to establish themselves, and Timmy is he's got the most points of any player playing in the tournament in terms of tournament points. He's got the most career tournament points of any active player, and you put that in line with Coach Few, and they've got as good a chance as anybody to be able to win it. Houston was my favorite until Sasser's injury. I mean, I just don't know what that groin injury is going to do to him, and they can't win it without him. They can win a couple of games in the tournament, but if he's not close to 100%, then I can't see them getting to Houston and winning the national championship. So that's why I picked Xavier in that region. I love the offensive firepower of Xavier. Despite losing a starter in Zach Fremantle for the year recently, they've still got enough. Alabama, again, deserving of the overall #1 seed. They've got a lot to like, and they've won different ways. And then Purdue, balanced. The big guy is as unique as you can find in recent memory in college basketball, Zach Edey. And the players around him, I think, are playing at a pretty good level. So those are my 4 on Selection Sunday that I picked to get to the Final Four. And I threw my hat in the ring for the Zags because it very well could just be their time. They've been knocking at the door, 2 championship games, 17 and 21, came up short, #1 seed multiple times. They've been championship caliber. You can be a championship caliber team and not get the trophy. And it may be their time to be both.
Yeah, I actually love I love Purdue. I'm going to be honest with you. I really love Purdue. Edey has done so many different things, and the way that he's done them with being, I guess, a multi-sport athlete, for lack of a better term, he's just been so dominant in so many different ways. I mean, it really helps with the fact that he's only 2 feet below the actual iron on the backboard, but the way that he does it, and the fact that he can be the willing passer, the guy to get someone in the perimeter from 3, and they use him in so many different ways. It's hard to say that, and of course, Purdue's not my overall favorite, but there's certainly someone to watch. They just want to win in so many different ways. Fast break opportunities, points off those fast breaks. They just look really good, really solid. But then you talk about Alabama coming out of the East as well, who just looks like the best two-way team that I've seen in some time. Opposite of where Michigan was back in 2018, where they were Staples Center, they ultimately won it all because of their dominance on both ends of the court. Alabama kind of reminds me of that, if you will. Alabama just looks really, really good. And I think not only are they deserving of the number one seed, but I think they'll not only retain that, but play that way throughout the tournament. Whether they come up short or not, that remains to be seen. But I just think Alabama just looks really, really good. Their passing, ball location, shot selection, who they get it to, who's the give and go, who's the sixth man. They just make it all work for them.
Yeah, no, they're a complete team. I agree with you, Rudy. They're great. They're a really complete team. I mean, they've got a tremendous player in Brandon Miller. He's poised for a freshman. He scores at every spot on the floor. And then they've got size. They defend at a really high level. They've not shot the three ball as well as they're capable of shooting it, and yet they've still continued to win games. And it can be really scary if they start to knock down threes with any regularity, because they do everything else. They offensive rebound, they challenge shots, they defensive rebound, they score in transition, they score at the rim, they get to the foul line. There's just not a lot of holes that you can poke into the Crimson Tide game. Cool. So I agree with you. I mean, they deserve the overall number one seed, and they'll get tested at some point, but I'd be surprised if they weren't able to get out of that South bracket and head to Houston.
Clark, give me some teams, however many you want, that you think are going to make some noise. It could be, it could be even a Duke team. It doesn't have to be a 9 or a 10 or an 11, but if you see, give me some teams you think that could.
I'll just go right through each. E-Mak, I'll go through each region. I'll look at the South. I love the College of Charleston team. I really do. I love their depth. They've got 5 guys average double digits. They shoot a ton of threes. They make 10 a game. They're gritty. They have tremendous savvy, and they know how to win. I mean, they've won a bunch of games, and the matchup with San Diego State is comfortable. Of the 12 of the double-digit seeds in the South, I like Charleston, and I also like Furman. I like their offensive firepower. They, too, are a team that scores the ball at a high level. They're going to play a Virginia team that's excellent defensively, but not nearly as high-powered as they've been in the past. I think those two teams, if you're looking at double-digit seeds, are really interesting to me. And Utah State and Missouri, that's going to be a fun game. Both of these teams get up and down. So that's who I look. I like Creighton too as a dark.
Who do you like, Utah State or Missouri? Because I got people in St. Louis. They want to know.
Yeah. I'm gonna lean with Dennis Gates in Missouri. They pressure you. They turn people over at a high rate. They make threes. Kobe Brown's a hard matchup. So I'm gonna give the slight edge to Missouri in that one. That's who I would pick in that game. But Utah State is gonna give them a pretty good fight, I would believe. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, what about the defending champions, the Kansas Jayhawks? They're the one seed in the West.
Yeah, we'll go out west now since you want me to go out west. Yeah, the one problem with Kansas is they've had some games that are just head scratchers as far as lacking offensive firepower. I mean, they don't have a dominant inside presence, so they don't get points that way. They get points moving, spacing, driving, knocking down threes. They face a formidable big guy, a guy like a Timmy, a guy like a Sonogo. Those are kind of guys I think could be problematic for the Jayhawks. But I love the way they play, and Bill Self is as good as it gets when you're talking about a sideline coach. In that region, Arkansas is interesting. They've been banged up. Can they find the three-point shot to go along with decent defense? They haven't been quite as disruptive defensively as they've been in the past. But Gonzaga is my pick there. UConn is the team that could very well come out of a real tough top 4 seed region. As a matter of fact, those 4 seeds are the toughest toughest seeds 1 through 4 in any region, I think. And then
You know,
I like Memphis. I think Memphis is the most dangerous 8 seed in the tournament. Duke and Kentucky. We know about their blue-bloodedness, but also they've struggled a bit. Duke playing really well. Those teams are dangerous. Sitting where they're seated. A double-digit seed to keep an eye on in the East. I like Louisiana. They've got a big kid, Jordan Brown, who could play at any division, at any high-power school, and they've got good guards around him. Tennessee losing Zakai Ziegler. That's a huge loss. I like Louisiana to really test Tennessee in that East region. And then finally in the Midwest, Kent State, Indiana, I've got that game circled. Kent State took Gonzaga to the wire in Spokane earlier in the year, lost to Houston by a basket. They're for real. They score it. They've got a great guard in Sincere Carey, guy who can make shots, make plays, and he's not alone. And they can be a little disruptive defensively. So that's a game that I'm really looking forward to seeing, is that Indiana Kent State game.
Yeah, you know, a head scratcher for me was how Kansas didn't make it to the Midwest region over Houston. I find that very odd. What are your takes on that?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, I don't dig
dig
into the weeds of the seeding and the brackets. I actually read Jerry Palm's article today, and he made great points when you talk about balance of the regions and Kansas over Houston. But it's splitting hairs to me, guys. You know, ultimately, sometimes you feel like you've got the short end of the stick on the seeding and the location, and sometimes you end up with better matchups. You know, Jay Wright talked about they dropped from the 1 line to the 2 line one year, and they won the national championship. So you can't get hung up on it. Clearly, it's something to talk about and discuss for those that are into the bracketology elements, and they're valid points. But now the bracket's established. It's about going out and playing now. How do you find a way to advance? And so all of the stuff around what led to where you are has no bearing on whether you're going to advance. What's going to have bearing on whether you advance is how you play. And that's what we're all most interested in.
Clark, thank you so much. CBS Sports college basketball studio analyst Clark Kellogg. If you're viewing this tomorrow, it's today. You can watch him. What is it? 16 hours of hoops.
It's wall to wall, man.
18 out of 24 hours. You're going to be sleeping in the break room. Is that what's going on?
No. I get my rest in my hotel room, E-Mak. And I'm live and awake and ready to go strong when we're on the air. But once we're off, I'll make sure I get my rest and then re-tee it and get ready for the next day.
Well, you've said a lot of nice things about other broadcasters. So let me say a couple nice things about you. I think you're super talented. You know your college hoops. You're great at predicting games. You really have a feel for the atmosphere in the moment. You've been doing this a long time, and it's a treat to see you every year on TV during the tournament. Man. It's almost like a rite of passage of spring.
No, I really appreciate those words, man. Thank you much. Very much heart touching. Thank you, bro. I'm glad I get to do what I do, man. I really am.
We're going to enjoy it.
I'm going to add to that. Actually, I'm going to add to that, and then I'll let everybody else go. It's so good to know that there are people like yourself who is not only a student of the game, but so aware of the intrinsic components, the real deep ins and the real deep outs of college basketball. There's not a lot of people, at least the ones that I know, that are not only well versed, but how to give someone that who's maybe a layman tuning in for the very first time ever and not have the chance to ever watch college basketball, but yet stay glued because of the knowledge that you exhibit every single time you're on TV. So thank you for that. It's fantastic.
Thank you, man. That's really one of my goals, is to help everybody enjoy the game, whether you're a rabid fan who's immersed in the game or whether you're just a casual fan who's helicoptering in with your bracket. Hopefully when you hear us talk about it, you'll go away informed and perhaps entertained too.
Well, that's going to wrap things up. Thanks a lot to CBS's Clark Kellogg. Watch him with Greg Gumbel, Kenny Smith, Charles Barkley in the studio throughout the NCAA tournament, through the Final Four and final Monday night championship night, which will be Jim Nantz's last broadcast that will be in Houston. So that's too much information as it is. I want to thank Clark. I want to thank Rude Dog Reyes. Thank you for listening to the Issues of Sports, and we will see you on the next episode.